Looking at financial markets overnight, we saw European equities down slightly and US equities broadly flat. Now, the market was actually fairly directionless as there was no major economic data or any other announcements to drive movement. This did follow some quite big movements yesterday, and this came on the back of comments from Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke. He came out surprisingly dovish, and this did weigh on the US dollar yesterday, which propped up the NZ dollar. Now overnight, the New Zealand dollar did remain fairly steady and it held on to yesterday's gains against the US dollar. The New Zealand dollar was also quite steady against the euro and the pound. However, the New Zealand dollar did make some small gains against the Australian dollar and the yen. Now the Australian dollar was weighed yesterday by comments from the Reserve Bank of Australia's Assistant Governor. Now he came out and made some comments against the high Australian dollar and its detrimental impact on growth. This very much suggests the Reserve Bank of Australia still has an easing bias, and it helped reinforce some of the rate cuts that the market has been pricing in for the RBA. Now oil prices remain reasonably steady overnight, and this was on some speculation that the US may release some of its strategic reserves, particularly if we see supply pressures become acute and oil prices rise further in the US. Now oil prices have risen quite sharply over this year, lifting quite strongly in February and are now up about 15% from the start of the year. While prices have remained fairly steady over March, they do remain quite elevated, and they have become the new threat to the global economic recovery. We are starting to see some early signs that higher fuel prices are denting economic growth. We've seen consumer confidence in both New Zealand and abroad decline as higher fuel prices are eating into households' disposable incomes that can be spent elsewhere. Now, what's behind the increase in oil prices is partly the global economic recovery, which is contributing to stronger demand for energy. But more recently, there are also supply concerns which are contributing to the most recent spike. This is particularly the case with sanctions against Iranian oil set to kick in around the end of June. There are some concerns that other producers may not be able to match the shortfall in supply, but recently we have seen Saudi Arabia come out and they have a pledge to fill that supply gap, and that has helped oil prices at least stabilise over the past few weeks.